Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Shape of Work webinar powered by Springworks. Thanks for being here on time. Great. For the ones who've joined, you can start introducing yourself in the chat section. Tell us what you do and where you're from. We'll start the webinar in just a few minutes. Hi, Manoj. Hi, Akanksha. Hello, Rahul. For the ones who've just joined now, hi, my name is Shweta. I forgot to introduce myself. I work at Springworks as a product marketer for Spring Verify. And yeah, I will be presenting today's topic. Hi, Shilpa. Hi, Hridya. What do you do? For anyone who just joined, we're just introducing ourselves in the chat. Just tell us what you do and where you're from. We have Abash with us as well. We'll start in just a few more minutes. We'll wait for a few more people to join. Nice to know, Vidya. Hi, John. We'll begin exactly at 12:05. So just curious to know how many of you have gone through the draft bill that we're discussing today? Hi, Chetan. Yes, like Abhash has mentioned, I think we'll take all the questions in the Q&A section. So if you have any questions while we are discussing or you already have some questions in mind, you can post them in the Q&A section here and I'll pick it up as we discuss it. Nice to know, John. You've gone through the bill. Just a quick intro about the webinar. We do this every once in 3 months, and going forward, we'll be covering more topics related to background verification and the latest trends that are and the news that's going around. So we'll get to connect more on that. All right, it's okay. Okay, I think we'll have more people joining in as we discuss. Before we begin, I would just like to introduce the Shape of Work community. It's a community of HR professionals. We have 2,300 plus members already, and there are masterclasses, discussions, and webinars happening every now and then. If you're not already part of it, then we'll share the link in the comments for you to join. I think it's time, so I'm going to just get started with the topic today. So let me just share my screen. For the ones who just joined, hello, I'm Shweta. I'm the product marketer for Spring Verify at Springworks. And if you're new, just comment in the chat, tell us what you do and where you're from. I'll just get started with the topic now. Great, I hope you can all see my screen. Thank you. Thanks for the thumbs up. All right. Great. Cool. So today's topic is the Digital Data Protection Bill and its impact on background verification. Our focus is going to be, linking the aspects of the bill to background verification, because this is coming specifically from a point of view that for Spring Verify. And so this is what we will cover in the next 45 minutes. Okay. So in the next 45 minutes, we'll cover the highlights of the data protection bill. We'll understand what the portability of data looks like if this bill gets passed, and what are the rules and regulations when it comes to data retention, who owns the data, candidate right to report, impact of this bill on background verification. Let us know in the comments now in the chat box, what are your expectations from this webinar? Are there any specific aspects that you'd like me to cover? And if this is something that I know that I'll definitely pick it up. So this is what we're going to do. We're keeping it very short. We'll have the last few minutes for question and answer. But overall, these are all the aspects that we will cover. You will get the link to the ebook and the recording of this webinar once it's done. So you're going to get all of it later. Great, so I'll just get started with our, right, I hope you can see my screen again. Great, so just a short disclaimer, this bill is just a draft and all the pointers I'm going to discuss today are in the draft stage. They're not final and they're subject to changes. So, and also there are certain parts of the bill that are not fully clear. So we're going to discuss whatever is there in the bill, but we might not have entire details about it. So let's go ahead. So what is Digital Data Protection Bill? So basically the Digital Data Protection Bill, just a little background about it. There was a draft that was released in 2019 as well, but it didn't get passed. So after that, there's another draft that came in 2022. So the difference between the two drafts were that there were 90 clauses in 2019 and there are only 30 clauses now in 2022. But it said that the 30 clauses cover almost all aspects of data protection in it. And but there are some more aspects that are unclear and they need to still be detailed. So basically, data protection bill is the protection of personal data. When we say personal data, we're talking about data such as your name, surname, phone number, address, Aadhaar number, email ID, anything that identifies you as a person. So that's what the bill is focusing upon. It does not talk about non-personal data at all. So non-personal data is something that is like the information that's collected by an app like Swiggy or Dunzo that's collecting your preferences. Amazon is collecting your preferences and they're looking at your browsing history and all of that. So those are non-personal data through which you can't identify someone with just that data. But this bill does not cover non-personal data. It only focuses on the very personal data. The digital data processed within India, this is another specification that has been mentioned. This draft only talks about the data that has been digitized. not the ones that are collected and processed offline. So in case there are information collected offline, in case they are digitized, then it falls under this data protection bill. But if in case they're not digitized, then this doesn't apply to that at all. So it's only digital data processed within India. And of course, we're talking only about the country India. So it outlines the rights and duties of digital citizens. In the next slides, you'll be able to see that there are a lot of rights for the digital citizens who are the candidates for the reference of our background verification. I'm going to use candidates more during this discussion. By candidates, I'm also including vendors, suppliers, anybody that you would background verify before you onboard into your company. So, but I'm going to specifically use the term candidates. So because that's the major chunk of background verifications you would do. So this is just for your understanding. So in here, in the context of background verification, the rights and duties of digital citizens refers to the candidates or the suppliers or the partners that you onboard and background verify. So there are a lot of new rights that have been clearly specified in the bill that we will be discussing. There are also rules and regulations, of course, for companies collecting, processing the data, also the companies that are defining the purpose of why the data needs to be collected and processed. And of course, it has been mentioned in the draft that there's going to be a data protection board that will be created. And this data protection board is what is the one that will do the grievance handling. So any issues that maybe candidates have or the companies have, there's a data breach, this board is the one that we will be going to. But the members of the board, the chairperson of the board, and everything is going to be decided by the central government. It's completely under the discretion of the central government who they choose and what roles they're going to give to them. So all of this is going to be decided by them. But the only advantage is that any order that has been passed by the Data Protection Board can also be challenged in High Court. So that's something that we can look forward to. So this is a little intro about the Digital Data Protection Bill. So we'll move forward to the next. So we're looking at the rights and duties of a data principal. So a data principal is a candidate, a partner, a supplier, whoever you're onboarding, whoever you're background verifying. So anybody who owns the data. So for example, if I'm getting background verified, then I'm the data principal because I'm the owner of the data. So right to consent is one of the biggest highlights of this bill. This has been mentioned multiple times. And of course, this is something that companies have already been following. But there are going to be specific things that are going to be important to mention in the consent letter going forward. So right to consent is one of their core rights. Right to seek correction and erasure of personal data is another. So earlier, candidates would not have access to these background verification reports or what processing is happening. Once they sign the candidate consent letter, they mostly don't know what's happening in the background. But now that's going to change a little. Candidates will have to be given more access to the data that's being processed. After it's being processed and what happens with the reports, they get to choose what to do with it. So and they can of course seek for correction and erasure of data as and when they feel like. So they can also nominate another person to exercise the right in case of death and incapability. Of course, this is understood. And consent can be withdrawn at any stage of data processing. Even if the background verification has begun, it's halfway through, they can just say, I don't consent this anymore and stop it immediately. So these are kind of the core rights of the data principal, who is the candidate or the supplier, whoever is getting background verified. At this point, I think I'm going to just run a poll and let all of you answer some questions. You can start answering here. Yep, most of you are getting it right. Looking nice. I think most of you got it right. Just to clarify this, partly the other two answers is just partly right. The second answer is the right one. The reason being, data protection bill is applicable in the collection of processing of personal data, yes, but it needs to be digitized. If it's not digitized, then it doesn't apply. So yes, that's the answer there. Great. So moving on to our next, we are talking about the obligations of the data fiduciary. So first is to seek consent. This we saw as the first point before as well in this previous slide as well. We've already been doing this. So, and to build responsible security safeguard systems and to prevent data breach. So this is also the reason why we have ISO certifications, compliances, and all of these things. We have been following these as well. So this is just a point that's been mentioned. These are one of our obligations. Cease to retain personal data. This is a point that is new. Earlier, the candidate did not have an idea of how long companies or data processors such as background verification service providers would retain data. Oh, I forgot to mention who a data fiduciary is. So in the context of background verification, data fiduciary is both the company and the background verification service provider or the agencies that you tie up with. So data fiduciary is basically any entity that specifies the purpose of collecting and processing data, which in our case is the companies. They initiate the background verification, and the purpose defined by them is to verify the people that they associate with. And data fiduciary is also the data background verification service provider, because we are the ones who collect and process the data. So that's who a data fiduciary is, and the obligations we have as a company or a background verification service provider is to seek consent, to have security in place, and to cease to retain personal data as soon as the purpose has been met. So this means that there is a limited time when you can store personal data of a particular candidate or a vendor, and it needs to be mentioned in the consent letter as well. So you need to say, as long as you serve in this company, or for a period of 3 years, whatever, it needs to be mentioned, and the candidate needs to know exactly this is how long they're going to be retaining my data. There is no perpetual data storage. It's not allowed. So this is one of the main changes that's going to be happening here. And never use data for any other purpose other than for which the consent was obtained. This is again a basic hygiene factor, but it's pretty strict in the bill. It's mentioned that whatever the consent has been given for, exactly that's what we will be using the data for. So these are the core obligations of a data fiduciary. Moving on, we're talking about data portability. Data portability basically is transfer of data from maybe one entity to the other, like one company to the other, or from one country to the other. So data portability as per this bill is completely it's forbidden. It's not allowed at all. But they have mentioned that there are specific trusted countries that you can transfer it to, and if there is consent by the candidate, then it can be transferred to them for their personal use, or for them to transfer it to any other party. So that's what data portability is according to this bill. So the data principals can obtain and transfer their data for their own use or to any other party. So here it again gives candidates more rights and more access to their own information, to the background verification reports. Earlier, background verification reports were not at all accessible to candidates or to vendors, for anybody who was getting background verified. But that's going to change if this bill passes. So data principals who are the candidates, they will be able to ask for these reports. They will be able to use these reports, reuse these reports wherever they wish to. So that's what's going to happen here. So cross-border data portability, again, like I said, it's forbidden. but it will be allowed for certain trusted countries. These countries have not been listed in the bill yet, but it is said that it will be coming in the near future. Like in the next versions of the bill, we might be able to see a small list of countries that they call trusted. So that's what data portability is about over here. Are there any questions at this point? I just somehow I'm not able to see.
Hey, Shweta, let me call out the questions. So Akanksha is asking, so if candidates don't give consent, can't we do verification with this new bill?
No, we're not allowed to.
Correct. And the second question is from Abhijit. He asks, but background verification takes so much of time because, okay, I guess that's not really a question. It's more of an observation.
Yes.
Background verification takes so much of time because previous company doesn't reply in time.
Yeah, I think this is a different issue.
Yeah. This is not related to the bill or the discussion, but can you how are we able to solve for this? How are we able to solve for this with Spring Verify? You can just give them a quick.
Yeah. So previous company verification in Spring Verify, how it's done is, multiple reminders are sent to the HRs and whatever contacts we have of the candidates. But there is also a check of whether they worked there or not from the PF. If they have a PF number, they can check how long they worked. But that's about it. Unless the HRs respond, that's all the information we can get from them. This really depends on the HRs responding. But there is something new that we are also working on now. Spring Verify is introducing, employment database where companies share their databases with background verifications service provider like ourselves, and we maintain it for them periodically. And every time an employment check is required for this from an ex-employee of this particular company, it gets redirected to us, and we do an instant reply based on what questions have been asked and whatever format it is. So this is a work in progress. This is something that's going to come up. We're solving for this now.
Cool.
So
yeah, I think that answers Abhijit's question. One more question, I think, related to a sort of a follow-up to Akanksha's question. Can we not do BGV using publicly available data and not worry about the consent from candidates?
As per this bill, it's really that's one of the strict rules they have. Consent is mentioned in every pointer. Like only if the candidate says yes, you can even start collecting the data. So that's something that we won't be able to proceed with. Of course, central government has provisions where they can completely exempt all the provisions of this bill. So that's only possible in high-level verifications, maybe for something that is very critical and sensitive. But for something like a company verification, it's not allowed and it's not possible.
Cool. Siddhant asks, from when is this effective? The bill, I guess.
Yeah, this we don't know yet. This is still in the draft stage, and they are still waiting for feedback. There are multiple feedbacks already received, but we don't know. From 2019, it never got passed. Again, there's another draft in 2022, and we don't know when this is going to be the final one.
Cool. We'll take one last question before we move ahead, and then maybe we will take the rest of them later. Can you provide some examples of digitalized data? I think you mentioned it. So I think Jyoti is asking, what are some examples of these digital data?
So form fills are digitized data. And for example, in context with background verification, when we send out a background verification form to a candidate, they fill out their information and send it back to us. That is digitized form of their personal data, because they're giving us their name, their documents, and their address and everything. So another form of it, apart from background verification, would be, of course, all the forms you fill up while online shopping. You're giving your phone number, your full name, your email ID, and all of that. So all of these are digitized form of your personal data that's being collected in the form through multiple forms. So that's that would be the answer to the question.
Perfect. I think we can take the rest of them later. You can move ahead.
All right. So cool. So I'm gonna move ahead to the next. We're talking about data retention. So data retention basically is how long you can store somebody's personal data, and for how can you reuse their data? Can you even reuse the data if required? So currently, this bill states that perpetual data retention is forbidden, as in you can't keep it forever. You can't have, we don't know until when this is going to be with us. It needs to be mentioned very clearly in the consent form that we are going to only hold your data for say 3 years or 2 years or a few months. It needs to be mentioned and followed very strictly. And of course, if the candidate asks for erasure of this data at any point in time, it needs to be obligated to. You are supposed to follow that. So they have that right that they can exercise. The period of data retention and purpose of the period must be mentioned in the consent letter. The purpose also is something that has been highlighted in multiple areas of the bill. So that you need to mention exactly why you're collecting it and where you're going to use it after it's being processed, and during processing of the data, exactly what you'll be doing with it. So all of this needs to be, so candidate needs to be a lot more informed than they are right now. And the certain data fiduciaries identified by the government do not have to follow the provisions. Like I mentioned, central government has given, there are loose ends to this bill, and this is one of them. They are going to identify certain data fiduciaries who do not have to follow any of the provisions of the bill. But I also, went more in detail here. And to understand this, it's the financial institutions that will be getting, more relaxation on these regulations, because of course there is fraud and all of that related risks in terms of money. So most probably the data fiduciaries who will be who will not have to follow the provisions of the bill will be financial institutions, or someone who will be managing very high level sensitive information. So that's about data retention. The highlight here is that the perpetual data retention is not allowed again. Here are some of the issues found in the bill. So there are wide-ranging exemptions to the center and its agencies. I mentioned this earlier as well. After every single key feature mentioned, there is an exemption that the center can choose not to follow it, or can choose not to even take consent at certain times. And it completely omits the protection of non-personal data from the bill. This is again something I mentioned initially. So non-personal data is your preferences, shopping preferences, or maybe your purchase history, and all of these telecom companies have your calling data and all of these things. So it doesn't cover the non-personal data at all. So this is another thing that has been missed that we can hope it will come in the next draft. The bill has removed the distinction between personal data and sensitive personal data. So this was something that was seen in the 2019 draft. There was a distinction between sensitive and just personal data. So for someone who doesn't know what a sensitive personal data is, it's details like religion, biometrics, your health records, and all of these information, something that are very, very sensitive and personal to you. So there is no distinction between this. So it's not clear whether it covers the sensitive personal data or not. It just, broadly says personal data. So we're not sure exactly whether this is included or not included. And it does not detail regulations for what happens to the data after the transfer to the trusted countries has been made. So as you saw in the data portability, there would be certain countries you can send the data out to. Of course, this works in the multinational companies space. So, but what happens to data after it has moved out of this country is something that's unclear again. So, are they allowed to further transfer it from that country to some other country, or what they do with it? What are the data retention rules and regulations that they will have? None of this is specified in the bill. So this is another loose end that needs more specification and more details that need to come to it. So that's about the issues that we found in the bill. So finally, going to the impact of this bill on background verification. Candidates will have to be given access to background verification reports. This is something we did not see before. Most candidates would not know what, is there a discrepancy? Why were they rejected? Exactly what were the comments that came back from employment checks? We had no clue earlier, but going forward, they will be able to, ask for access. They will be able to go through these changes and, ask for corrections or erasure. So that's something they'll be able to do. Data principal will own the background verification report. Again, this is another change that we will be seeing. So we're talking about, there are no regulations being in place for what happens to the data that goes to the other countries. Can other countries import the data from there to somewhere else, or can they retain data from their end? So we've discussed the issues. We were in the impact slide while the glitch happened. Sorry about that. So the impact of all of this on background verification is that candidates are given more access, to their data and the processing of their data going forward. So they can ask for the background verification reports. They can ask for these reports to be transferred to them, and they are also allowed to reuse the reports as they wish. They can give it to another party, or they can use the same report to approach any other company, or if they were joining any other company, they can use it there. So they have more access and rights over this data, even though it has been processed by a third party. And candidates will own the background verification report. This is one of the core changes that we are going to see. Earlier, there were clauses mentioned by certain companies that they own all the data that they process, even if it means that the candidate personal data, the reports, the background verification reports, whatever the comments that they see coming from all these employment verification and all of that, they were all owned by the company, and candidate did not even have access to this. But this changes now. Any data that belongs to the candidate, whether it is processed, whether it's just collected, everything belongs to the candidate, and it can't be owned by companies or background verification service providers anymore. So that will be changing. Consent letters will have to be more transparent, meaning they will have to mention what happens to their data, how it's being processed, who is going to retain this data, for how long it's going to be retained, and what are the rights that the candidate has, the right to erasure, the right to correction, the right to report in terms of a breach. So this is one of the things that are important, that if there is a data breach by background verification service provider or the company, there's some kind of data leakage, or there has been somebody's hacked your database, it's very, very important for the candidate to be informed that a data breach has taken place. Earlier there was no mention of this, but this bill specifically mentions that in case you don't inform the candidate that there has been a data breach that has happened, then there is a hefty fine for the company, for the data fiduciary who has failed to inform the candidate about it. So this is the core impact of the bill on background verification. We have one more question. So I'm just launching a poll for you to answer this on data retention. I'd like to see how many of you have got that right. Yes, most of you have been getting this. Yeah, most of you got this right. A few of you got it wrong. Okay, so the right answer is the third one. So they can't retain data for as long as they wish to, because this was possible earlier. But if this bill gets finalized and it becomes effective, then they won't be able to retain data for as long as they wish to. They will only be able to retain it for as long as they've taken the consent from the candidate. So yeah, that's about that. So we were pretty much in the end of the discussion anyway, but we will get to cover the last part. So that's all I had to discuss. I wanted to just take you through a little bit about Spring Verify, because I mentioned it a lot during this discussion. If some of you are wondering exactly, what does Spring Verify do? So this is what we do. So Spring Verify is a background verification service provider. We are tech driven, and we use AI and automation to make background verification fast, effective, and automated. So the traditional background verification looks something like this. So it's time consuming, it's high priced. This is the usual process. HR approaches the candidate, collects the documents, shares it with the third party background verification service provider, and then the verification happens, the reports get sent back to HR. This is, and in this cycle, a lot of HR spend, half their day just following up, getting updates and, whatnot. So they're wasting a lot of their time and energy in background verification. How we do it instead is this. So the HR uploads basic details such as name and email on our Spring Verify dashboard. And so after that, an email requesting documents and information gets sent out to the candidate that was uploaded here, and the candidate uploads all the documents onto Spring Verify. Spring Verify verifies all their information and sends a report back to the HR. So Spring Verify makes this entirely automated. All the effort that the HR needs to make is just this 5 minutes uploading of the name and email of the candidate. That's all the effort it takes. There, we've been rated the best for customer support, and we have been known for freeing up their time entirely in background verification. So this is our biggest USP, I would say. So about Spring Verify, we are compliant to ISO, and these are the top industries that we cater to. And here are our top features: workflow automations and candidate experience. We've been known to have a delightful candidate experience, and we think onboarding starts from background verification. So you need to make the first impression right as well. So instant KYC, dedicated customer support, and all of these things. So we have 20 plus checks, and we have our turnaround time is one of the best in the industry. And yes, and these are some of the ratings and reviews we've received. We are rated 4.9 on Google out of 5 with 500 plus reviews. And we are also rated 4.7 out of 5 on G2, which is a software reviews and ratings platform. And yeah, we have pretty great ratings there as well. So if you're interested in a demo, you can drop in your details in the chat, and we will, get in touch with you. So I'm going to take up any last questions we have for today about the draft. While we wait for the questions, I'd like to talk a little about our newsletter. So we've recently launched HR Brain Pickings, which is a weekly newsletter that talks about multiple HR issues. And every week we pick up a new HR issue, anything that's trending or anything that's bothering, HRs, and we discuss it and we talk about it. So we've received great response on this. And if you're interested in, learning more about HR issues and understanding it better, we write very detailed, insightful newsletters on that. So please subscribe to that. We'll share the link in the chat. And if you're not part of the Shape of Work community, there are 2,300 plus members already. So it's where all the discussions regarding HRs happen. Every Friday, there are job listings on the HR job listings channel. So if you're interested, you should join that as well.
Okay. Shweta, I think we can take questions. I think, yes. Yeah, Sibin, the questions will be there on the saved doc that would have come, but we don't have access to it right away. But yeah, I think you have asked your question. Great. So Sibin asks, who will be liable for sharing the report with the employee? Will it be the employer or the BGV organization?
This is not clear yet. It only mentions that candidates need to have the right to ask for their reports, but it has not been specified exactly who would be sharing the report with them. So there needs to be more clarity on.
There is, yeah. So there are, I think, too many questions. The answer is there is more clarity needed, and that's why we wanted to do this webinar as well, to just orient people, make people aware that this is something which is coming up. And we will, of course, do a good job of keeping you up to date with all that is happening in this space. And this is just the first step, right? So this is the orientation webinar. We will keep you up to date. Like I mentioned in the chat, we have an ebook. We will send that across to you. But of course, things are subject to change, and we will keep making updates to the ebook. You will keep getting those updates. I think John has a question here. If data is collected from publicly available data and processed in India, will this data require consent? Who is the owner?
It is collected from publicly available data from Indian databases itself. John, I need some clarity on that. When you say publicly available data, where is it getting collected from?
Yeah, I think... John, are you there? Yes, Sibin. So that's a good idea. We will curate all the list of questions and share it in the email as well. And hopefully, we will, Shweta, what we will try to do is we will do a Google Doc with all the questions and potential answers and share it on the email, maybe in a follow-up email, maybe, because we will take a couple of days to come up with the right answers. Cool. Manoj asks, I think John maybe is not there. John, we need some clarity on the question that you have asked, if data is collected. We will wait for you in the chat. Meanwhile, Manoj asks, how will this new bill impact ex-employee verification services? My org has one such database management arrangement with a BGB provider. Does this data belong to the company or the candidate?
No, as per this draft, all of the personal data belongs to the candidate itself. And in this case, this is the case where the data portability comes into play. So if you're going to hand over their database to another agency that's going to take care of your ex-employee verification, then you need to take prior consent from them for that as well. So that will be a change that we will be seeing.
Good. And Seema has a question. Data principal will own the BGV report.
Yes.
Who is the data principal? Okay.
Data principal is the candidate or the vendor or the supplier who you're initiating the verification for. So, for example, if you're hiring somebody new into your organization, and you're running a BGV on them, then they are the data principal.
Got it. And if it is a vendor who you want to run background verification on, then the vendor, because their data, they become the data principal. Hope that clarifies, Seema. Cool. I think we have hopefully answered all the questions. I'm not sure if there were a couple of questions before we made this technical error at our end. Okay, so John has clarified this data is collected in India. John, what I will do is, I think, let me see if I can give you, because we will need more clarity on that. Let me see if we can give you access, allow to talk, so that we have clarity. Yeah, John, I have given you access to audio, as in mic. If you can ask your question, I think that will just make it much more clearer.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, yes, we can, John.
This is Dr. John.
Hey, Doctor.
This is a very, very important question, because everything will get washed out if this is not answered.
Okay.
We collect data from publicly available data, irrespective of whether it is whether it's social media or whatever it is digitized. But it is publicly made available. It is not made private in a Facebook or whatever it is. Okay. I collect the data, I process it. Who's the owner? Do I require a consent?
Yes, you do.
Why do you?
You're collecting and processing the data of some individual, so you need the consent of that individual.
This is only, of course, true when the data bill comes into when the bill becomes
I'm not. I've not understood. The access to this data is not restricted by the principle itself. If I access that data and I use it to get some knowledge about something, how do I require consent? He is made it publicly available.
For example, I'm uploading some information on Facebook. I've given my consent to Facebook that, you can retain my data for so much amount of time and you can use it for these purposes. But if you are going to take it from Facebook, my personal information, you need my consent for it.
No, I think Shweta, if and Dr. John, correct me if I'm not getting it right.
So saying is logical, no doubt about it.
Yeah. So I think Dr. John is, are you mentioning things like, my posts on say LinkedIn or Twitter because they are in the public domain?
Exactly.
Yeah, but those are not personal data as such.
Yeah, those are not personal data. So personal data only is something that like your phone number, your Aadhaar number, your email address, and these are the only personal data that have been listed. Your address. So those are the only ones. Not the content you generate on social media. Those are not personal data.
I would like to counter myself. Now, if I have gone for a party and I posted a photo of me having a drink, is it personal data?
If you have
sorry for asking you difficult questions, I'm really sorry for this.
No problem at all. These are all fair questions, and I think we will also have to clarify it a lot more. But yeah, if you have posted it in the public domain, say for example, if it is on Instagram and you don't have a private profile, then it is in the public domain and it is public data, right? Because there is no personally identifiable information in that picture. So unless the person, I mean, this, of course, I'm hypothetical scenario, unless the person has, typed their Aadhaar number or phone number, whatever on the picture, of course, totally hypothetical scenario, but there is no personally identifiable information there.
There is currently nothing mentioned about
see, the moment there is a picture, face recognition technology is available, so it is identifiable. Sorry, I'm turning taking opposite sides, okay, just to answer.
No problem at all. No problem at all. So what we will do is, can we take this offline, Dr. John?
Great,
because
great.
we just
but it's been a great webinar, okay?
Yes. So what we will do is, we will anyway reach out to you over email with all the slides, the recording, the ebook, and then maybe we can continue the conversation on email, or we are also happy to get one-on-one on a call if
both
that
for me.
Works for you. Perfect. We will do that.
Thank you. Thanks, John.
Thank you. Really appreciate your question though. Cool. I think okay, we'll take one last question because we have set the expectation for 60 minutes, so that's in another 3 minutes. Sibin asks, though this is not related to data bill, but please suggest how can we reduce the TAT for educational verification, as the universities take a long time even after sharing all the mark sheets, but still university keeps pushing for degree. What can be done to use the mark sheet itself and reduce TAT? Shweta, do you want to take it, or I can also?
You can go ahead, Ramesh.
Cool. Yeah. So like Rahul has mentioned, digital locker verification over time should help with this. But at this point, the coverage is very, very little in terms of how many universities are uploading the degree, mark sheet, etc. And to be, honest, this is one of the ways which, sort of they also make some money, and each university has their own processes and such, right? So yeah, from the background verification perspective, this is definitely one of the biggest challenges that we have, Sibin, this data related to educational verification. And it's just that, things are all over the place. Every university follows its own rules, but we do try and solve for it wherever possible. What we suggest, what we definitely suggest to most of the companies that we work with is to not make this sort of the blocker in finishing off the background verification process. But yeah, hopefully with DigiLocker, if the government is able to enforce, and if the universities start using that, hopefully that solves our problem. Correct, Sibin. You are very, very correct. TAT for most of the other things is like 2 to 7 days we are able to do, but education verification is sort of the thorn in the back, if you will. But yeah, there is no sort of, one solid answer to that challenge. Cool. Shweta, I think we can close the last minute. So
yes. Great. So I think I see some more questions. I will, like we mentioned, we'll make a doc of the Q&A and we will try and answer all your questions there. I will be sharing an ebook with you that has a lot more detail about all that I spoke about today. So that will answer a lot of your questions as well. I'll also share the webinar recording with all of you so that if, in case you missed some parts of it, you can go back to it. Thank you so much. You've all been great audience today, and thanks for making this interactive and interesting for me as well. I hope I've been able to deliver some value to you today, and you'll receive an email asking for feedback. So please give me your honest feedback so we can do better in the next webinars. So, and if you have, if you're interested in a demo, you can leave it in the chats here, and we'll pick it up and we'll set up a demo for you for Spring Verify. Thanks everybody for being a part of today's webinar. I hope you have a great day. John needs the demo.
Okay. Yeah, you can switch off the video. We'll just keep it on if someone wants to. I think the webinar is done, but if someone wants to, you can just say, need a demo. We will figure out your email ID and all, because you have registered using your email ID. So yes, of course, Sibin, we will share the PPT, data bill, all of that, right? Sorry, the ebook and all of that. Sure, Prashant, we will reach out. We will reach out. We have noted, we have made a note of this. Anyway, Zoom will share the chat transcript with us, as in the, and we will ensure that everything that is mentioned here in the chat, we take care of. We will ensure that everyone's, expectations are met. Cool. Last 14 participants. Anyone else looking for a demo of Spring Verify? Or even if you want to do sort of a more deeper dive, of course, we will share the ebook, which will be a much more deeper dive into the data protection bill and how that changes background verification. There is still much more clarity to be had. So we will work together. We will keep sharing. Thanks, Prashant. We will reach out. Cool. Okay, then. Yeah, closing last minute. If anyone has any requests, please share it in the chat. Otherwise, we will go ahead and close this webinar now. And anyway, we will also reach out on the email, so you can also obviously reply there. Cool. Okay, then. Thanks, everyone. Closing this out now.
Thank you. Bye-bye.